At first, there is only movement, not movement toward something, not movement away from something, just movement itself, continuing because it always has. The body moves without needing permission. Breath moves without waiting for attention. Time unfolds without asking whether you are ready. There is nothing you need to begin, nothing you need to leave behind. You are already inside the moment that is happening. The mind may still be active. Thoughts may still rise and fall, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They don't need to be quiet for this to work. They don't need to make sense. They are simply part of the movement, no different from footsteps or breath. Attention drifts naturally. Sometimes it moves outward. Sometimes it turns inward. There is no need to choose between them. Both are allowed. Both are already happening. You may notice that effort begins to soften, not because you decide to relax, but because nothing here requires control. There is no task hidden in this moment, no goal waiting ahead. Nothing needs to be managed. The sense of direction loosens slightly, not physical direction, but the inner feeling of needing to go somewhere. Movement continues, but without destination. This can feel unfamiliar. We are used to movement being purposeful. Here, movement exists on its own. The mind may search for meaning, for something to understand or collect. That search does not need to stop. It simply does not need to succeed. Understanding is optional. This time does not depend on insight. The voice moves through the moment without trying to shape it. It does not guide. It does not explain. It stays close, like something moving alongside you without matching your pace. You don't need to listen closely. You don't need to follow every word. Listening can come and go. If attention wanders, nothing is lost. If attention sharpens again, nothing is gained. Each moment stands on its own. There is no continuity you need to protect. Time does not break when attention drifts. It continues evenly, with or without focus. You may notice that the body feels more automatic now. Steps find their rhythm. Balance adjusts on its own. There is no need to monitor it. Awareness rests lightly on movement, without turning it into an object. The body is present without being emphasized. The mind may try to check in, to ask whether you are doing this right. There is no right way to be here. There is no wrong way either. Being present is not something you perform. It happens naturally when nothing is interfering. This does not require calm. Noise can exist. Distraction can exist. They do not interfere. They simply pass through. You may notice moments where nothing in particular stands out. No thought, no sensation, no sound asking for attention. These moments do not need to be filled. They are not empty. They are simply unoccupied. Time passes through them quietly. The mind does not need to comment. There is no reason to frame this as special. Nothing extraordinary is happening, and that is exactly why it works. Ordinary moments do not demand effort. They do not need explanation. They do not need to be remembered. This is not an experience to hold on to. It does not belong to you. It does not belong anywhere. It is simply time unfolding without resistance. The sense of me is still present, but lighter. It does not stand in front of experience. It blends into it. Identity becomes quieter, not removed, just less central. There is no need to maintain this. Nothing collapses if attention tightens again. Nothing is lost if thoughts become louder. The moment is not fragile. It does not depend on your cooperation. You may notice a subtle widening in awareness, not expansion, not focus, just space without effort, space for sound, space for thought, space for silence. None of them compete. The voice becomes part of the environment, not the center of it. Words move through silence, and silence moves through words. Neither needs to dominate. There is no instruction being given, no lesson unfolding. This is simply time passing without being shaped. You are not preparing for what comes next. Preparation implies expectation. Expectation is not required. The future does not need to be anticipated. The past does not need to be referenced. Everything needed for this moment is already here. Movement continues. Breath continues. Awareness continues. And nothing needs to comment on it. This is not about calm, not about clarity. It is about continuity, about letting the moment move forward without interference. Nothing is being optimized. Nothing is being improved. Nothing is being processed. There is only the quiet agreement to let time continue as it is. And for now, that is enough. As time continues, something subtle begins to shift, not in a way that asks to be noticed, but in a way that becomes clear only afterward. The sense of effort fades a little further, not effort you were consciously applying, but the quiet tension of needing to stay involved. Attention no longer tries to hold the moment together. It allows experience to unfold without checking whether it makes sense. There is less interest in tracking what happens next, less need to follow the sequence of things. Moments arrive and leave without lining up. The mind may still move, but it moves more loosely now. Thoughts do not arrive as plans or problems. They appear more like fragments, unfinished and unimportant. They do not insist on continuation. They pass through awareness without forming a narrative. This does not feel empty. It feels unburdened. Experience is no longer being organized around a center. There is less sense of standing somewhere and observing from that place. Awareness feels present, but not located. This absence of location does not disorient. It relaxes. Without a center, nothing needs to be oriented. The body continues its quiet rhythms. Movement adjusts itself naturally. Balance finds balance without instruction. Breath moves without being noticed for long. There is no need to supervise any of this. The idea of staying present loses relevance here. Presence is no longer something to maintain. It happens by itself when nothing interferes. Even distraction does not interrupt it. Attention may wander far away at times. When it returns, nothing has changed. The moment was never dependent on attention. This recognition does not arrive as insight. It does not crystallize. It simply settles quietly. Time begins to feel less structured. Minutes soften. They overlap rather than progress. There is no sense of falling behind. No sense of catching up. Nothing is being measured. Without measurement, movement feels lighter. The mind notices this and does not react. There is no attempt to hold on to it. Holding would introduce effort, and effort is no longer needed. Experience feels open, but not wide in a dramatic way. It feels ordinary, uncompressed, like something that has always been here, but rarely given space. The voice continues without trying to shape the moment. It does not guide you forward. It does not summarize what has passed. It remains alongside, unattached. Listening becomes less intentional. Sometimes words are heard clearly. Sometimes they blur into rhythm. Both are fine. Meaning fades in and out without consequence. Understanding does not deepen this. Not understanding does not diminish it. Nothing depends on clarity. The sense of self softens further, not disappearing, just becoming less relevant. Experience no longer feels owned, not because ownership is rejected, but because it no longer matters. Things happen without needing to belong to anyone. This creates a subtle relief, less responsibility, less management. There is no need to decide what deserves attention. Everything is allowed without ranking. Sound, movement, thought, silence share the same space. None of them compete. The mind may attempt to comment, to frame what this is. Those comments pass without sticking. The moment does not hold still long enough to be captured that way, and it does not need to. There is no benefit in naming this. Name would make it smaller. So nothing is named. The sense of time passing becomes almost neutral, neither fast nor slow, just passing. There is no anticipation of what comes next, no feeling that something should happen. Waiting dissolves because expectation dissolves. This does not lead to boredom, it leads to ease. The moment is complete without entertainment. Even movement itself loses its emphasis. Walking continues, but it no longer feels central. It becomes background. Everything blends. There is no clear division between inner and outer experience. Thought and sensation occupy the same openness. Awareness rests without needing a place to rest from. Nothing claims importance. Nothing asks to be held. Nothing asks to be remembered. The voice remains part of the environment, not the focus of it. It continues because time continues, not because something must be said. There is no arrival here, no sense of having reached something. There is also no sense of leaving, just continuation. For now, this is how things are. At some point, even the idea of following along begins to fade. Not abruptly, but gently, as if attention no longer feels the need to keep pace. Listening becomes less directional. Words arrive, but they do not demand to be held. They pass through awareness without asking for response. The rhythm of time becomes more apparent now, not as a sequence, but as a flow that does not pause for interpretation. Moments do not wait to be understood. They happen, and then they are gone. Nothing lingers long enough to form an attachment. The body continues to move, but movement feels quieter from the inside. There is less sense of effort behind it, less commentary. It is not that sensation disappears. It is that sensation no longer insists. Awareness touches things lightly, then moves on. Thoughts may still appear, but they feel thinner now, less solid. They no longer carry weight or direction. They do not point toward action or reflection. They simply occur, then dissolve. This creates a subtle spaciousness, not emptiness, but room. Room for experience to exist without being shaped. There is no urge to fill this space. Silence becomes comfortable, even when sound is present. The mind no longer looks for something to do with the moment. It rests within it. There is a sense now that nothing is being added and nothing is being taken away. Experience feels complete without enhancement. This does not feel profound. It feels ordinary in a deeper way, as if this has always been available, but usually overlooked. The voice continues, but it no longer feels like guidance. It feels more like a current moving through the same space as everything else. You may notice that time feels less linear here, not distorted, just less emphasized. There is no sense of progression, no sense of building toward anything. Each moment stands fully on its own. There is nothing to carry forward. There is nothing to leave behind. The sense of self becomes even more diffuse, not gone, but spread thin. It does not anchor experience. It floats within it. There is no effort to maintain identity, no checking in, no internal narration. When thoughts arise, they do not say I. They do not say you. They do not frame experience as belonging to anyone. This lightness brings ease, not excitement, not calm. Ease. The body feels capable without being controlled. Movement adapts naturally. There is trust in this adaptation, even if it is not consciously recognized. The idea of doing something right no longer appears. There is no reference point for that. There is only what is happening. Attention feels wide but unfocused. It does not lock on to details. It allows everything to exist at once. Nothing is excluded. Nothing is prioritized. This does not feel overwhelming. It feels balanced. The mind does not try to organize this openness. It allows it. The voice blends further into the background now. Words are heard but not tracked. Meaning comes and goes without consequence. If a sentence lands, it lands. If it doesn't, nothing is lost. There is no accumulation, no insight being built, no message being delivered, just continuity. The present moment no longer feels fragile. It does not need protection. It does not collapse when attention shifts. It does not improve when attention sharpens. It simply continues. There is a subtle confidence in this, not personal confidence, but situational. The moment can hold itself. Nothing needs to manage it. There is no urgency anywhere, no signal that something should change. Even change itself feels unnecessary. Things move because they move. Time passes because it passes. There is no hidden reason behind it, and none is needed. The experience feels stable, but not fixed. Open, but not drifting. Grounded, without ground. This is not a state to remain in. It does not need to last. It does not need to deepen. It is complete as it is, and it will move on without disruption. For now, everything continues quietly. Gradually, without a clear boundary, the sense of being someone begins to return more fully, not as a sudden shift, not as a correction, just as a quiet reappearance. Thoughts begin to sound a little more familiar again. They start to reference things, small plans, small recognitions, fragments of the ordinary. None of this feels intrusive. It feels like something gently finding its place. The openness that was present does not disappear. It no longer stands out. It blends into the background, the way a steady sound disappears once it no longer needs attention. Awareness does not tighten around experience. It simply reorganizes. Attention becomes slightly more selective. It begins to rest on things a little longer. This does not feel like loss. It feels functional. The body feels more defined again. Weight is noticed. Movement has shape. Steps feel clearer, but not heavier. Breathing continues in its own rhythm. It does not need to be guided. Nothing needs to be adjusted. The mind resumes a familiar role. It starts to sort lightly, to distinguish one thing from another, sound from thought, thought from sensation. These distinctions do not undo openness. They coexist with it. There is no need to choose between being open and being ordinary. The two are not opposites. Ordinary experience is where openness lives most of the time. The sense of time becomes clearer now. Minutes feel more distinct, not rushed, not pressing, simply present. The idea of what comes next may appear, not insistently, just as a soft outline. It does not pull you forward. It exists alongside the moment. There is no urgency to move on. There is also no need to stay. Both options are equally available. Listening becomes a little more intentional again. Words are heard more distinctly. Meaning returns, but lightly. If a sentence lands, it lands. If it doesn't, nothing collapses. There is no requirement to follow closely. Attention is free to move. Sometimes it rests with the voice. Sometimes it moves elsewhere. Neither movement requires correction. The sense of self feels more present now, but not dominant. It does not stand in front of experience. It participates quietly. Identity feels usable rather than defining. It does not need to be examined. There is no impulse to capture what this felt like. No urge to store it away. Memory does not need to be involved. Nothing here asks to be remembered. The openness you experienced earlier does not become fragile as the mind returns. It was never dependent on silence. It does not vanish when thoughts increase. It simply becomes less noticeable. This makes it more stable, not less. The mind resumes making small evaluations. This feels pleasant. That feels neutral. Evaluation does not disturb the moment. It is simply part of being human. There is no need to push it away. The body continues to adapt naturally. Posture shifts, balance adjusts, awareness checks in occasionally, then moves on. There is no need for constant supervision. Movement continues to feel natural, neither forced nor effortless, just happening. The present moment does not need to be held open. It does not close when attention narrows. It does not collapse when thought becomes active. It remains available without needing protection. The voice continues without summarizing, without concluding. It does not gather what is past. It lets it pass. There is no sense of arriving at an ending, no signal that something is complete. This does not feel unfinished. Completion does not apply here. The moment simply continues into the next one. You may notice that attention now alternates naturally, sometimes wide, sometimes focused. This alternation feels comfortable. There is no ideal state to maintain, no preference that needs enforcing. The ordinary rhythm of being present returns fully without pressure. Walking feels like walking again. Time feels like time again. Nothing special is lost. Nothing special is gained. The quiet that remains is subtle now, not something to notice. It is felt only as the absence of strain, the absence of needing the moment to be different. The mind may briefly reflect on this. It may try to understand what shifted. That reflection does not capture it. It does not need to. Nothing here was meant to be captured. This was not an experience to keep. It was simply a period of time where nothing needed to be forced. And now time continues in the same way it always does. The openness does not insist on staying. It does not insist on leaving. It has no preference. The ordinary carries on without resistance. For now, that is enough. After some time, there is less need to stay with anything at all. Not because attention disappears, but because nothing asks to be held. The voice remains present, but it no longer feels like it carries weight. It does not introduce anything new. It does not close anything off. It simply continues alongside what is already happening. Attention rests more often now, not in one place, but in a general ease. There is no effort to listen closely. There is no effort to let go either. Both feel unnecessary. Thoughts may still come and go. They feel ordinary again. familiar. They do not pull attention strongly. They do not ask to be followed. They pass through like background noise that no longer needs to be identified. The body continues without interruption. Movement happens as it happens. Breath finds its own rhythm. Nothing needs to be checked. There is no sense of managing experience anymore. No sense of arranging it. Things happen, and that is enough. The quiet that remains does not stand out. It does not feel special. It feels like something that was always there, but rarely noticed because it does not demand attention. There is no reason to focus on it now. The ordinary has fully returned, but without pressure. Tasks may come to mind. Plans may appear faintly. They do not feel urgent. They do not pull the moment apart. They simply exist in the background. There is no need to resist them, no need to engage them yet. The moment holds itself without asking for anything in return. Listening becomes optional now, not in a way that signals an ending, but in a way that allows attention to drift freely. If the voice fades into the background, nothing is lost. If it comes back into focus briefly, nothing changes. Nothing here depends on continuity. There is no thread to hold on to, no meaning to extract. This was not a process. It does not lead anywhere. It was simply time without resistance. The mind may try, briefly, to summarize what this was. That impulse passes. There is nothing to summarize. Nothing happened that needs to be understood. The body feels settled enough to continue, not finished, just ready for whatever comes next. The sense of being someone is fully present again, but it feels light. It does not press itself into the moment. It exists quietly, doing what it normally does without needing attention. The voice does not try to leave a final impression. It does not offer a closing thought. It simply remains until it no longer needs to. Words become less important now. They carry less shape. They dissolve more quickly after being heard. Silence begins to feel natural, not as absence, but as continuation. There is no clear line between what has been happening and what comes next. The transition does not announce itself. It happens on its own. Time continues, not faster, not slower, just continuing. There is no sense of something ending. There is no sense of something beginning. Only the ongoing movement of ordinary moments. The quiet that remains does not insist on being noticed. It does not ask to stay. It blends into the background of experience where it belongs. There is nothing to carry forward, nothing to apply later. This does not make the moment empty. It makes it complete. And when attention finally moves elsewhere, it does so without leaving anything behind. For now, everything continues exactly as it is.